So why does plastic get such a bad rap in today's society?
Some of it's probably justified, and then some of it is. I think people don't understand fully about plastic. I think we lost the media battle. Plastic used to be the savior of the world, and it turns out a very short number of years after that we became somehow evil. And I just don't believe plastic is evil. I think it has it's the right packaging um, for most applications. I think what people are worried about is what happens. How do you get the molecule to start with, and what happens at the end of its life? And I think, like everything else, sometimes industry gets ahead of what's good for the environment. And so I think there's some things that plastic industry did that maybe put a bad taste out in people's field of vision. They just don't, they don't know what they were doing as far as where plastic was going to end up. And you got the Great Pacific Landfill, trash heap that's floating out in the Pacific Ocean. People are all worried about that. And everybody's dumping their plastic, and it doesn't ever go away in the environment. So some of the concern is founded, but some of it isn't. I don't know if you're old enough to remember. I am. I'm 61 years old. I remember I was a box boy in a grocery store when paper bags went out of favor because people were so afraid that they were killing all the trees, having to chop them down and turn them into paper, and how bad that was for the environment. And so along came this thing called high density polyethylene plastic, and all the grocery stores switched all their bags over to plastic bags. They were much lighter, easier to transport. They cost less in transportation costs with the footprint of gasoline and all of that diesel getting it to the stores. You could pack a lot of groceries into those bags and carry them home and reuse those bags multiple times. Everybody put those bags in their trash cans and use them as a trash liner, or they picked up their pet waste with them and then they disposed of them. And that was the greatest thing. And then suddenly now I go to the grocery store and they've outlawed plastic bags in Southern California, all of California. One-time use plastic bags are the enemy, and they're switching back to paper of all things. So
Right.
we've kind of come full circle. So plastic all by itself is not bad. I think what we do with it sometimes is bad.
Right. So it almost seems like well, I'd say marketing, but, whether or not you got the marketing people out there for the plastics versus the paper. But I do remember definitely as a kid in the paper bags. And, now, I mean, I didn't think of it during that time, but, now that I think about it, the amount of space that it would take, just storage, let's say you could get 15 or 20 or maybe 30 paper bags out there, but you could have probably 250 plastic bags right there. So the people weren't having to run back and forth near as much, and just a lot less space consumption using,
and just the transportation to get those bags to the stores. Right. I mean, all those trucks that are carrying those paper bags and or plastic bags, they have a footprint on the road and the highway and traveling and all that. So not to mention, where do you get your paper? Paper is not an easy, it's not easy on the environment to turn wood pulp into paper. It actually has a pretty large footprint. But people, like I said, I think we've lost the war with the people that are yelling the loudest, getting the most of the spotlight, the PR. We've lost that PR campaign.
Yeah, we'll get back in a few minutes. We've got another question we want to bring up in kind of dealing with this subject. But Jeff, why don't you let the audience know who we got with us today?
So today we're honored to have Bob Clarke with us. He is the director of custom solutions with LK Packaging, based in Commerce, California. His previous job was with Great American Packaging in sales and product development for over 11 years. And so beginning with Bob, we wanted to actually start with a video that was a new video for me to see. It was very impressive. And so we want to go ahead and play that now, and then we'll ask Bob about it in a moment.
All right. So that video that we just watched, Bob, I remember you and I've known each other for quite some time. The Western Ice Association is where I formally got introduced to you, and you were playing this video that we just watched, and it made a pretty big impact. Can you give us what's behind the scenes? You got anything on this? And we know that this was your former company, so just if you don't mind, tell us about
No,
this.
man, it was actually quite a bit of fun to do, and we sort of stumbled on it by accident. When I started working for Great American Packaging 13 years ago, as a salesperson and then a sales manager, one of the markets we weren't strong in was ice, and ice was a significant part of packaging. A lot of pounds and a lot of poly goes into ice manufacturers. So my question was, hey, how come we're not selling ice film? And the answer that came back was, we don't have a good one. And I said, how do you tell a good one? And they said, well, we end up with a lot of returns because of breakage. So I contacted one of the local sales, or one of the local ice manufacturers, Party Time Ice, San Pedro, Doug Marchant. Walked in one day and said, hey, Doug, I work with Great American Packaging. He goes, great, you got some ice film for us? I said, nope, don't have any. And he goes, well, why are you here? And I said, because we're developing one right now, and I want you to know me when I come back in with something. And I asked him the question. He said, bring us some film, we'll test it. And I said, how do you test your film? He said, well, we'll fill up bags of ice and we're going to go throw it off our dock. And it's going to hit the ground. And if it breaks open, it's a bad bag. If it doesn't break open, it's a good bag. So with that in mind, Bruce Carter, the president of Great American Packaging, started working with our resin manufacturers. And we isolated the characteristics that would make a good ice film, and we engineered it. We came up with 4 possible test rolls that we thought would work well in that Hamer 540 machine. We took them all down to Party Time Ice. He was very nice. He spent time with us, and he ran 20-pound bags on all of them. Unbeknownst to me, he took one of the 20-pound bags right off the line with our first one. He said, which one of these recipes is going to work the best? And I said, the one with the red stripe on the top. So we ran that first. And he put one of those 20-pound bags in his dry ice bin. And if you know anything about dry ice, it's not actually an ice. It's a frozen gas. It freezes at 109 below zero. And the bins that he has outside was at about 60 below zero, half filled with dry ice. So he threw my 20-pound bag of wet ice on top of that to get it really,
Sounds
really
like a
cold.
setup.
It was a setup. He was going to prove to me that my film was going to break, right? Because nothing holds up at 60 below zero, plastic-wise. So he put it in there. We got to the end of the run. He liked all 4 of the rolls we gave him, ran better than the film he was currently running. I grabbed a bag and started to walk outside. I said, let's do your test. He goes, not with that bag. Let's use this one. And he pulled it out of the dry ice bin, took it out on the dock, threw it off the dock, fully expecting it would just shatter, and it bounced. And he picked it up and threw it a second time. And I got a video of Bruce Carter down there with me. He, the president of GAP, picked that bag up and threw it over his head, landed on the ground, it bounced. It just kept bouncing and it wouldn't break. So he thought, well, surely my bag is just as good. He went in the freezer, grabbed one of his bags right off a pallet, threw it off his dock, seal popped open. Grabbed a second bag, did the same thing, seal popped open. Went inside and started pulling bags. Every one of his seals failed. And he looks at me and says, how much is this film? I said, how much is all that bad ice in your freezer going to cost you? So he became a customer of Great American Packaging right then. But in leading up to that, as we were testing, knowing what the acid test was for ice guys was, they just want the bags not to break. They don't want to have to clean up ice on the merchandisers. They don't want to have their crew out there cleaning them up out of the stores. They don't want the returns to the stores and returns to them because of broken bags. So before we took it down to him, we handmade some sample bags and we threw them on the ground and they didn't break. And we threw them around, they didn't break. And I looked up and the roof of Great American Packaging was, three stories in the air, it was 30 feet in the air. And so my marketing manager, who happened to be Beth, she grabbed her phone and I went up to the roof and I took one of the 7-pound bags that we had built and I threw it off the roof and it bounced. And she got it on video. So we started showing that around and that kind of evolved into, well, this probably isn't a bad marketing thing. Let's show it. And everybody accuses me of those videos being doctored. They're like, that's not real. I'm like, trust me, it is.
So,
do it yourself.
So my follow-up question, you've already answered it, but I was going to ask, how many takes did it take to get, one that didn't break? But I think you've already answered that. But
we did it with a 7-pound bag. We did it with a 20-pound bag, and none of them broke. And they bounced. They mushroomed out a little bit, but they just wouldn't break. So
That's
Ethan, I don't
true.
know if you remember, but at one of the ice shows after that, I was trying to how do you show how strong a bag is, and you can't put wet ice in it and have it there in your booth if it's not refrigerated because it's just going to melt. But I wanted people to be able to handle the bag with ice in it, and I couldn't figure out a good way to do that. So I had another bright idea. I took that 7 pound bag of ice and I filled it with saltwater taffy. Remember that?
Yeah, I
And I
do. I do, yeah.
and I built a wooden stand like a pinata stand,
Pinata, yeah. And you had
and I
a
hung it up
stick out
there,
there.
and I had a baseball bat. I had
Mhm.
a wooden baseball bat, and everybody that came by our booth, I let them take a whack at it. And they would take a whack at it, and it would bounce, and it would bounce around, and nobody was breaking it. And I thought, see, this stuff is bulletproof. And I don't know if you remember this, Ethan, but we were down in Huntington Beach, California, and Ethan, who used to play college baseball, says,
Tennis, yeah.
let me
Tennis.
have that bat." And he swung it so hard he cut the bag entirely in half. I said, "Well,
Well,
it's not indestructible, but it's certainly not going to break. It's certainly not going to break in a merchandiser."
That's
yeah,
pretty
well,
cool.
I still get after it. Still try to get out there and stay athletic as much as possible. But yeah, it was tennis that I played in college, but I still think I got a pretty mean baseball swing. At least that's what I tell my 14-year-old son all the time. So, but it was fantastic, and I had forgotten until you mentioned that I was able to take care of that bag. But hey,
we were
let me
we
tell you,
were,
it
we were
was
picking up saltwater taffy from booths multiple booths away.
well, if you're going to send it, you got to do a full send, right? So I did my best on it, but I did forget about that. But thank you for bringing that back. But that was one of the coolest videos, and it was almost like a superhero video, and the whole clanking and everything. It was just well done. So I enjoyed that video.
That almost echoes back to the days of the strongman competition demonstrations, tearing the phone book in
Phone
half
book.
or something like that. Like it's just so physical and dramatic. I love it.
Now you're putting pressure on me because we're going to be back in California for the IPIA, and now I got to figure out what's going to be my crescendo, my follow up to that. But do not bring a phone book. I will say I do not have that strength. So.
So Bob, I wanted to ask you about what makes a good ice bag. What part of the manufacturing process is the most important to the ice industry?
Yeah, in looking at it, there are same reasons why we didn't make a good ice bag. It's really comes down to it's kind of like baking a cake. And what's the cake that you want to end up with, right? Do you want to end up with a light, fluffy, wonderful cake? Do you want to end up with a really dense, heavy cake? Plastic is the molecules that you can put into it, lots of different ones, and they have different catalysts, and each of those has its own characteristics. So if you take a standard butene, molecule, and you turn that into low density polyethylene, it won't have any strength at all. It won't have any tensile strength or dart strength. You can poke your thumb right through it. It's just the cheapest way you can go on plastic. So then there's next level of molecules up. There's hexenes and the like that are 6 molecule chains. And then there's octenes that are 8 molecule chains. The idea is finding the right blend of all of those to give you the characteristics that you want for your bag. So with ice, very specifically, you want it to be able to be thin. So it doesn't have to be a very, very heavy gauge bag and still hold a lot of weight. So it needs to just have that tensile strength. But you also need something called dart, high dart, which means it's puncture resistant because ice has a tendency to be sharp. So you don't want that sharpness to poke into the bag, and as it's being thrown around or stacked in a cooler, you don't want them to puncture each other. So high dart, high strength. There are different ways to go about doing that, and when you do that, some of the things that you sacrifice, which is some of the other films that were on the market at the time, they didn't have a very wide sealing window. So you have to blend a recipe, if you will, that has the right strength, but that also has the right sealing window. And by sealing window, I mean, what temperature does that plastic start to melt again to initiate a seal between the two layers? And also, plastic is one of those really finicky things that if you get it too cold, it'll look like it's sealed, but it's not quite. If you get it too hot, it's a crystalline structure, so it actually crystallizes. Then the plastic becomes very brittle if you get it a little bit too hot for a little too long. So balancing those and giving them a seal window. One of the things that Party Time was most excited about was When we went in there, he had a plus or minus 3 degree seal window on his Hamer 540. 3 degrees too cold, and it would look sealed, but it wouldn't stay sealed. 3 degrees too hot, and it would crystallize, and you grab the top of the bag, and it would tear right off because it was so brittle right where the seal was. We opened that up to plus or minus 15 degrees, either side of perfect. And we did that by adding a secret, I can tell you, but I'd have to kill you ingredient into the plastic to widen that seal window. And all of this, anybody who knows plastic knows the science behind it, but we engineered it around that specific Hamer 540 machine, knowing that it had some issues with that hot band seal on the top. Also, water drips, right? When you're bagging ice, you're going to have some of that ice cling to the machine. It'll melt. It'll drip down into the horn. And as you're trying to seal it, you've got this ribbon of freezing cold water that's in the way of that seal bar. So as the seal is happening, that really cold section and wet section doesn't like to stick together, right? So we engineered this film that it'll seal right through water drips, and it was a nice, wide, very, very strong seal, and that's the difference. So when engineering film for any package, if it's ice package or any other specific package, it's very important to take into account what are the challenges the people that are using that film have, how can we overcome those challenges, and what can we do on a molecular level, really, chemistry-wise, to make it better.
Well, I have to tell you, as you were explaining every bit of that, I had to try to figure out a way that I could explain it to myself mentally. So I heard two things. You were talking about a secret formula. So I'm going to say it's like Coca-Cola, So, you got something that's protected. You guys there, and Great American Packaging has their own formula to be able to engineer that. And then I was thinking M&Ms because, to melt in your, not to melt in your hand, but to melt in your mouth has to be perfect, So you got to find those things. So anyway, for me, to put it in my own layman's term, for me to be able to understand what you're talking about.
Are you hungry? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm thinking it must be dinner time. Ethan's all about food.
Well, we're here on the more the East Coast while you're out on the West Coast. So yeah, we're getting close to food time. And then if we want to take it to the cold, take an M&M, throw it into ice cream, and you got you a good, good ice cream. So good treat. Yes, I'm hungry. Well, since we're talking about that, and for me, I would like to play another video here just a second. So we're going to go ahead and play this video. I think this probably is a little bit old, but you can get us caught up if there's anything in the manufacturing process has changed. But it was really beneficial for me to be able to watch this video. So we're going to play that real quick, and then we'll be back in just a moment.
You can use them for groceries, for shopping, for taking out the trash. Chances are there's a growing pile of them somewhere in your kitchen. With so many everyday uses, it's easy to see how people can get carried away with plastic bags. The plastic bags we use every day are made from granules of linear polyethylene resin that will be melted. They combine the linear polyethylene with another low-density one in this mixer. The granules are perfectly blended into a homogeneous material. Granules melt in the extruder, which heats them to a temperature varying between 356 and 465 degrees. This produces a film of polyethylene in the form of a tube. It is several hundred feet long, has a minimum thickness of 2/10,000ths of an inch, and a circumference of 20 inches. The plastic tube gradually cools down. Rollers then flatten out the plastic tube. The polyethylene film is now easy to work. And now they cut the tube on two sides to obtain different rolls. This knife then cuts the film to the required width. The excess strip is salvaged in this tube. Several hundred feet of film are produced and rolled up. This particular roll contains the required quantity of film. When the roll is full, the film is cut. This roll moves forward and can be transported to another department. An empty roll begins to fill up automatically. A full roll weighs 348 pounds and can produce 35,000 bags. The next step, printing on the bags. This alcohol-based ink circulates continuously to retain its viscosity. Impressions are made by inking rollers. Here, another color is being applied on the bags. Once printing is over, the plastic film is rolled up again. The roll is now full and the cutting of bags can get started. This machine makes 150 bags per minute. A sealer bonds the edges of the bag together with heat. The wheel picks up the bag and puts them on 2 spindles that can hold 250 each.
All right, Bob, so watching that video, it is a bit dated. Go ahead and kind of give us a few highlights of how the process has changed in the years since that video was taken.
There are probably some manufacturers that are still doing it exactly that way. The plastic, when it came out, there's some of the smaller film manufacturers, but the main things that stuck out to me were the mixer. You no longer have to mix it in that tumbled, add all the ingredients, tumble it together, and then add it to your extruder. All of the blend now, the secret ingredients that are all blended in exact proportions, that all go through a volumetric mixer. So they get weighed up based on, I need X percent of this and X percent of this. It takes that and it discharges it, and it mixes it all together and drops it into the extruder. And then on the Wicket machine, most ice bags, if most of the people that are running large ice manufacturing, they aren't using Wicket bags. Some still do, but the larger ones, it's all roll stock. So the film is actually produced and high-speed printed directly on rolls, not converted into Wicket bags. And if they do use a Wicket machine, that Wicket machine ran about as slow on your video as any I've ever seen. So that's a very old machine. The new ones will run up to 300, 320 bags a minute. So very, very high speed, much better seals. Other than that, it's accurate. That's literally what it is. It's kind of fascinating. The first time I've been in printing for 30 plus years, 34 years now, but packaging for about the last 13. And I remember walking into the plastic plant for the very first time and just thinking, this is like magic. Now you're not getting, bags of resin in, you're getting rail cars of resin in, 190,000 plus pounds of resin for a station rail car. It's being pumped straight into the extruders and blown. And it goes 60 feet in the air to set and cool off and all of that. And they're taking these hard resin pellets and turning it into magic. They're blowing film, and they're controlling the gauge of that film to plus or minus 1/10 of a thousandth of an inch. I mean, it's amazing.
When I watch that video and hear you explain things of how much engineering and how much science goes into creating something that we take for granted as the general public. I mean, whether it's the ice, I mean, you never think twice about grabbing a bag of ice out unless it rips on you, right? So then you're like, stupid plastic. So, I mean, you get frustrated there, but I mean, you just don't think about it in the complexities. And even though that video is older and you say that some people may still be doing very similarly, I mean, it's only gotten more technologically savvy and advanced, and the ability to be able to roll that out. And like I said, the simplicity of how we use it, we just take it for granted.
Yeah. I love those kind of videos that show you how things are made. That's a great site, because you take everything for granted, right? And no one notices. You don't notice all the plastic bags in a grocery store till you're in the plastic business and you walk through and realize everything that's packaged that way. So it's fascinating. And I'm that guy. I'm a nerd from a long time back. I just love learning stuff. So stuff like that excites me. My family doesn't always understand why things like that excite me.
Well, and for me, I hadn't watched anything like that. I kind of heard it described a couple times, but now I'm sitting here picturing, okay, that's how you might make an ice bag. But what about a different kind of bag? What about different shapes and sizes? And there's got to be an incredible amount of science, and just the ingredient list that you're talking about for the different kinds that you want to create has got to be incredible.
Yeah. And speaking of that, could you tell us about LK Packaging and who you're with right now?
So LK Packaging, we are a master distributor to distributors. They've been in business. LK's been in business for a very long time, almost 60 years, 55, I think. And we are primarily to the public, primarily stock facing. We don't sell to end users directly on our stock side. They sell to other distributors. And we have 8 strategically located warehouses across the United States. We have manufacturing connections throughout the world. And we will maintain inventory of the items that our customers need. There you go. There's our 8 locations. So we're strategically located to make sure that we can supply what people need when they need it. And instead of being the manufacturer who has to put 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks into their schedule, these are items that we know the customers are going to need, and we'll stock them in large quantities. We'll bring them over from overseas or from domestic manufacturing, and we will hold them in inventory and release them. Somebody gets an order in by 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon, they get it shipped out the very next day. So very, very, very good. As the director of custom, I take everything that's on that webpage that's a stock item, and a customer says, I want that and I like it, but I need it to have my logo printed on it, or I need it just like this. And like you said, a little different size. Your stock size is 8 by 10 and I need 8.5 by 10. So my department takes anything that's in our inventory that's in stock, and we will then go find a way to source that, manufacture that for them. And we have deep manufacturing ties all across the world for a very long period of time too. So really, really strong, robust distribution chain, and we do a really good job.
I may have missed it, but and you may have said it, so I apologize asking if you already did mention it when you were telling us about LK. But are you guys in do bags for ice industry?
We have some stock bags that are ice bags, and we will do some custom runs of ice bags. But typically, the roll stock, the people that are in that business and doing it really, really well and do it the best, that's not LK's business. So, matter of fact, when I left Great American Packaging, literally the company I'm working with now is in Commerce, California. LK was in, Great American Packaging is in Vernon, California. We're about 3.5 miles apart. LK Manufacturing will ask Great American Packaging at times to make things for us because we need somebody who can manufacture. They have the capabilities to do. If they get a customer that says, "Great, I want 20,000 8 by 10 flat bags," they don't want to make those. That's too small of an order for them, so they will buy them from us. So we have this relationship where we still work together hand in hand. I have nothing but good things to say about them. They're a good company, and LK has been a great company to work for the last 16 months. So,
all right. Good. All right, Bob, I think it's time for your first icebreaker.
Oh, no.
I hope you're not too nervous. We warned you ahead of time we'd have a few off-the-wall questions for you. So your LinkedIn states that you graduated with a degree in mathematics from, yes, I think it's Cerritos.
Yeah, Cerritos. Okay, so full disclosure, Cerritos Junior College with an AA in mathematics, which it took me 12 years to get. Don't judge me.
So that was the follow-up question was.
That's right. Yeah, we sort of noticed that, but it actually only says around 10 years here. So
there you go.
Well,
10 years. Yeah.
We thought it was interesting that it took that long, but it also said that you graduated with the highest honors.
I did. When you take classes one at a time, you can get straight A's.
Well, we were curious if you just kept at it until you finally got the highest honors.
All right. So yeah, no, thank you very much. I didn't have to throw any grades out. I take it back. I got the highest honors. I didn't end up with a 4.0. I ended up with a 3.97 or something because I got 2 B's in my entire career in school at college. And that was because I started off as being a business major, right? I got married at 20. My wife was 19. We were incredibly mature. We still are at 20 and 19. So right out of high school, I was working full time. Nobody at my high school back then said, "Hey, you should think about going to college." It was one of those things. Some people went to college and other people didn't. So I got a full-time job. Got married very young, and we decided, that this is good. We're doing this. My wife worked, I worked, and about a year or two after graduating high school, I went, I should probably maybe think about what I want to do with the rest of my life and maybe go to college. So I started then, but by then I was married and had a full-time job. So you do what married full-time job people do is you do night school. So I took a class. The most I ever took at a time was 2 classes in a semester. I would do those after hours. They were typically 7 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock at night, 1 or 2 nights a week. And I plowed through, and it took forever, but I just never stopped. I was a continuing student for so long that I had the very first registration spot every year, just because nobody spends 10 years in a junior college. You get first place in line for your next class. There was one semester I was so tired. You're going to love this, Ethan, because there's one semester I was so tired. I just didn't want to take another class. So I took a beginning tennis class, but I played varsity tennis for my high school. So, so when I got there, I was just trying to dumb it down and just hit the ball. And I ended up playing a little too well. And my coach said, "You're not a beginning tennis player. Why are you in my class?" I said, "I needed a break from school, but I didn't want to lose my status as a continuing student."
I think you were going for the highest honors.
I switched to math. I switched to math from business. The only 2 B's I ever got in school were because I had to take, as a business major, I had to take accounting 1, 2, and 3. Well, in accounting 1, I learned all of the manual double entry accounting, and I knew how to do it. Accounting 2, it just got a little deeper, but it was still the same. Accounting 3 was the same. And accounting 2, I just said, you know what? I don't have time to do the homework, so I'm just not going to. I got A's on all the tests, but I didn't do all the homework. I got to be in the class. Same thing with accounting 3. I got to be in the class because I wouldn't turn the homework in, just didn't have time. So those are my only 2 B's. And then guess what? I changed from business major to pure math because I realized I love math. I'm a nerd and I love math. And my goal at that point was to be a high school or college math teacher. I thought, I love math so much, I could do this. I could be a teacher. And then while I was getting my 10-year degree, my AA degree, and then thinking I had to go on to get a BA and then a teaching credential, I was working in sales during that time. And then my wife had a baby and became a stay-at-home mom. And I looked at my paycheck and I looked at what math teachers were making, and I never went backwards. Math was off the table, but I still use math every day.
Well, I'd like to point out to all the younger folks who may be watching today that back in the day, you couldn't just take all these night courses online, and Bob had to grind, had to, put in the hours to actually be there in person.
That's impressive. No, seriously, that's impressive. I mean, that's dedication. Very difficult to do. Very, very difficult to do.
So shout out to all your employers out there. When you put on your job resume that you're requiring a bachelor's degree or you won't accept an application, imagine someone like me who only has an AA and you don't give me a shot. Come on, I'm a smart guy.
That's right. And good looking. So, I mean, it's all those things. I mean, look at the impressive backdrop behind you, all those books. Clearly, that is a fake background, or you're well read.
I'm well read. Most of those, some of them are my wife's. Most of them are mine. There's a whole shelf of kids' books. We love reading in our house. My kids love reading. My kids would get in trouble on a weeknight when we would put them to bed, and an hour or two later, we'd sneak in their room and we found them under their covers with a flashlight reading a book. That's when we scolded them. Put the book down and go to sleep.
That does not happen in my family. It does not. So, well, speaking of that, let's just go ahead and talk about your family, if you don't mind. So I had the pleasure of meeting your beautiful wife, Sue, and just getting to know her. My wife was able to meet you guys too. We just had a good dinner. It was actually in Hawaii, I believe, that we were all able to chat. So a wonderful trip. We've got a few pictures here. Tell us about your family.
That's my beautiful wife, Sue. We'll be married 41 years this July. Those are my grandchildren. Josiah's 13, Elijah, the next one down's 11, Asher's 5, and baby Joanna's going to be 1 this August. So those.
Okay, so it's a fairly current photo.
Yeah, okay. That's a very current photo. My wife was back there just a few months ago and took that picture. So they live in Manassas, Virginia. There's me with a little older. Trying to get pictures with all your kids in it is hard. So I found a little older one. These are my 3 kids, and so my son is on the left. That's Brian. Megan is next to me. My other daughter, Erin, and that's with her first 2 grandkids when they were still smaller, or her first 2 kids, my first 2 grandkids, and her husband, Lucas.
Look, I'd be remiss if I did not bring up the Tom Selleck darker, albeit a darker mustache that you got rocking. But
Wow.
you don't beat Tom Selleck, but you're better than I could do. Let's just say
I've had a mustache since 10th grade in high school. It's only come off once.
that.
Wow.
And for what reason?
But came on. Oh, that's a funny story too, because I used to coach baseball. My son played 6 or 7 years of Little League. I was his manager, and every year. And one year we had a team that just was horrible. They couldn't win a game. We did eight games in a row. I think we lost. And so I made the kids a deal. I said, tell you what, my mustache has never been off my upper lip. Not since 10th grade in high school when I grew in. I've never shaved my upper lip. I don't know what it looks like under there. If you guys win a ball game, I'll shave it. And guess what? It wasn't until the third game after that we won. I brought the razor and a mirror and the shaving cream. I put it on top of the dugout. I'm like, let's win this one. And we lost. And the third one, when we won, the kids were more excited that my mustache was going to come off than the fact that they just won their first game all season. So I shaved it. I went home. My daughter wasn't there. My oldest daughter, Erin, looked at me when I got home, and she did a double take. I guess I looked a lot like her grandpa at that point with no mustache. And she said, "What did you do?" I told her. She said, "Grow it back." And that was it.
So I'm glad that they won that. My best Tom Brady impersonation is "Let's go." All right, let's get back to the family here.
There you go. That's my wife and I. We like to travel, and now that we're a little bit older and the kids are grown, we travel as often as we can. That's we were in Ireland last year for our 40th wedding anniversary, and that's the cliffs of Kilkee on Ireland on the Wild Atlantic Way.
Okay, so I was up at the cliffs of Moher, and fantastic. Yep. The cliffs of Moher are taller, but I wasn't sure, and I know California has some beautiful. I had no idea that's beautiful.
So we went to we had a local person told us, don't go to Moher, you'll be fighting traffic, and all the people are there. If you want to see the beautiful cliffs and have absolutely nobody on them, go just south of there, and that's Kilkee, and they were not wrong. It was beautiful.
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
This is us when the baby was born. That was last August 7th. She was a brand new baby. So I think this was taken on the 10th or something like that. Sue and I and our 4 grandkids back in Manassas, Virginia.
Awesome.
And then getting out of the house, well, the ladies took care of other details. Me and a couple of the younger ones. I love to hike. I'm an outdoor person too. I just love to be outside. So I said, hey, you guys want to get out of the house? And me and 2 of the grandkids went for a nice long hike by the river.
And looking very dapper with that hat.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That was my Ireland hat.
Tying it all nicely here. So another hat we got here.
Yeah, that's a weird hat. Sorry about that. But I put that picture in there when I sent it to you. That's when you asked me, what do I like to do for fun? And I ride my bike between 4,000, 6,000 miles a year. I just love it. It's my escape. I don't have to pay for a gym membership. I just go ride. I still right now ride to work. I live 20 miles from my company, and I ride Tuesday, Thursdays round trip. So I do 80 miles a week just commuting. And then this is up in Big Bear. When I get up to Big Bear, I like to ride around the lake. That's like a 32-mile loop around both lakes. So
that's awesome.
Very cool.
And that is my cabin in Big Bear. And what you can't see in this picture, and the reason it's so funny to me, if you look to the right where the snow is landing, you will see some feet, some legs. My grandkids were so excited that Grandpa was going to use the snowblower and clear the driveway up at Big Bear. My cabin's at 7,000 feet. Yep, right under that snow pile is my grandkids getting buried in snow and laughing. They were like, "Do it again!"
Well, I'm impressed you're out there without a big coat or anything like that. That looks like
a guy. I carry my heat with me.
That looks like a lot of fun. Well, switching kind of back to business a little bit, Bob, I wanted to ask you, who has had the biggest impact on you as a businessman or with your career?
I will tell you, I'm not sure how it'll come out, but God is the one who has had the biggest influence on me. Very early on, my wife and I, as we got married and we started having kids, but even prior to that, I had a good friend at church who'd said, you know what, the number one thing you need to do is put your priorities in order. So very early on, I set my priorities in this order. God comes first. My wife comes second. my kids come third, my job comes fourth, and I come fifth. And if I put everything in that order and I keep it in that order, it seems like life works well. It's when
Right.
you get them out of order and you put anything else in front that it gets upside down. And if I keep them in that order, it's brought me to the place where I am right now, doing what I am doing right now, because I've turned down some amazing job opportunities. I remember when my kids were very young, I started in the printing business, and very soon, 2 or 3 years into that, I had an opportunity to advance at that company. They were on the East Coast, and they said, "We'd like to make you national sales manager to cover the entire United States." I said, "What does that look like?" And it was travel 3 out of every 4 weeks, Monday through Thursday every week. And I had a wife at home and a baby at home and another one on the way. And I looked at them and I said, "I'm going to turn you down." And they said, "What?" I said, "If you don't mind, I'm going to turn you down." And they said, "Why on earth would you do that? Don't you understand the opportunity we're giving you?" And I said, "I do." I said, "But are you happy with me doing what I'm doing?" They said, "Of course we are. We wouldn't offer you the promotion." I said, "Then please leave me in that position right now, because I can't do that to my wife and leave her home and be gone that much. I can't be that absent of a father." So to me, if I follow that order, I put God in front and his will, put my wife second, and I tell my kids this: my wife comes above you. Kids are third. Don't make me choose between your mother and you, because I'll choose your mother. Yeah, and then I fall somewhere down near the bottom. I'll put my work above that, but I won't put my work above my wife or my family or my God. So
No, that's a fantastic answer. So now I'm going to jump in. We want to go back to another icebreaker real quick. Obviously, you being over on the West Coast, we're over on the East Coast. We're about to travel next week for my daughter. She is a senior. She'll be graduating from Thompson High School in the Alabama area. But
congratulations.
yeah, so it's pretty cool to watch her maturation and everything. So, but my question to you is Disneyland versus Walt Disney World. Which one's better?
Oh, wow. I've been to both. I live 7.5 miles from Disneyland. I'm in Orange County, so
Mhm.
literally I ride my bike past there when I do my loop. And my son works full time for Disney, and my daughter Megan works for Disney. She is in the recruiting business for the Disney Animations studios. So she's there. My son's actually at Disneyland Park and been there full time for 6 years now, I think. But I would have to say Disney World. Um,
Yeah.
it's so much bigger, and they have more room to grow into. They have some amazing parks. I love Disney World.
My daughter that's graduating, she was part of DECA. Her name is Ella, and she won the state competition here in Alabama. So she was able to go and do the international, and that was actually there just right outside the park there at Disneyland. And she was able to go, and my wife was just out there not too long ago. And I also saw that Disneyland is going to be doing some type of $1 billion renovation or
They
taking up
are.
space and going to be doing an expansion. But like you said, you're very confined right there. It's everything Anaheim, everything's right around you, so there's not a lot of room to stretch your legs, if you will.
That is true. They're moving one of the parking lots and building another structure so they can open up some of the space to put in a new area. So, but yeah, they're pretty much limited how far they can spread out. You don't have that problem in Florida. There's a lot of room to spread out.
Well, obviously, if you've ever watched anything about Walt Disney and how smart a businessman he was, he realized he was landlocked there. So obviously, all the shell companies, everything that he created to buy up all the land to not run the price up on himself. So,
Yep.
buying up lands and different companies and stuff and getting it pennies on the dollars until they heard what he was doing. And then everything, went up pretty quick. So
I promised my wife we're going to Europe next year, so I want to
Oh,
do Disney. I want to do Disney Paris. Haven't done that yet, but
yeah.
that'll be
Do you
fun.
get any perks with your son working for Disneyland?
I'll get free tickets into the park. That's about it. He can get me in anywhere, so he'll give me some free passes to get into Disney Paris.
Solid, solid. Well, since we're talking about expensive, what would you say back on the work side is the most expensive cost associated with a plastic bag?
For ice bags in particular, it is the poly, just the cost of the resin itself. That's the majority of the cost in anything on ice bags, especially roll stock film, the greatest percentage. Which is why when we did what we did by creating a recipe that was better, we had to use more expensive molecules, more expensive base resins, basically to get that blend. So Great American Packaging made the best film on the market for a time. Other people caught up because it wasn't a secret so much. They did know how to do it. It's just that the cost wouldn't justify it. So there were people that would put very, very inexpensive resins into their plastic, and they wouldn't give them the strength of the characteristics that they needed to make it work well. So by far the cheapest way to cut cost, if you're driving price down, is to use a cheaper resin. Your package is going to suffer because of that. And so we brought the market up and made everybody, I think, a little bit better. I believe we, by what we did, by giving them a better recipe and showing people, hey, you're going to save money in the long run by not having all the returns, and it'll run better, and you won't have to worry. I think it brought the whole industry up.
Now, does that include the shipping costs of it as well, or
Yeah.
is to make it and ship it? How does that compare?
It depends. If you're doing full truckload rates on shipping, right now, depending on how far you're going, it's $3,000 to $5,000 to get an entire truckload, but that could be 39,000 pounds. So if you divide that out by the number of pounds, just the cost of resin itself is the largest cost.
Okay.
High-speed printing presses now running 1,000 plus feet a minute. It doesn't take long to print the film. It takes longer to run it, but even then, the extrusion cost isn't as much. As a percentage, I'm going to say the highest percentage is raw materials.
Okay, cool.
Interesting. So thinking about, the changes in the industry, looking into the future, what has you excited about the future of the plastics industry?
Technology is coming along, so plastic is easy to make. They stumbled upon an invention a long time back in the early 1900s, and then 1950s, everything became plastic because people figured out its fun uses. That's when a lot of the bad things probably happened that left a bad taste in people's mouth, as far as forever chemicals that are out there, the PFASs. You've got all kinds of things that are worrisome to people now because of plastic. The thing that excites me the most is that the plastic industry is formulating new and amazing technologies. Those technologies come at a cost, but they are making it better. So they're finding new raw materials that they can use to turn into plastic. And by that, I mean, it's all chemistry, right? It all starts as a carbon atom, but where do you get it? So polyethylene is ethylene. It's polymerized ethylene. Ethylene is just ethane gas that has then been turned into a solid. So you take ethane gas, turn it into ethylene, then you polymerize it, make polyethylene. That's low density polyethylene or high density polyethylene. So, but you don't have to start with a gas. You don't have to start with ethane gas, which is a natural gas byproduct. You can start with other things. So people over the years have been experimenting with, where can I start with, what carbon molecule can I start with, which led into the whole compostable sugar cane, starches, lots of different raw material that you can start with that carbon molecule and convert it and turn it into something that's plastic. So on the sustainability side, which is a big issue right now, it's where do you get your raw materials from? Is it a sustainable product, something that I can regrow? Natural gas that you pump out of the ground is where you get your ethane, but that is not a renewable resource. Now we have tons of it, and there is no shortage of natural gas. And every time we drill for oil, we get natural gas too. We offload the natural gas and it's in the system. But the question is, it's still not a renewable resource, right? When it's gone, it's gone. Now, it may not ever be gone in your lifetime, my lifetime, and 100 lifetimes. But the fact is, it's not renewable. So if you can find a molecule to start with that is renewable, so a lot of people, corn, you take a corn product, you grow it, you take the husk of the corn, or you take the stalk even, and you strip off the carbon molecules, and you are able to polymerize that and turn it into plastic. So the earliest phases of that came up with plastics that were very expensive, not as strong, had a lot of drawbacks. I think the thing that excites me the most now is that the technology is coming along where they can build the molecules out of other things that are highly sustainable. There still is a cost associated with those. It is more expensive than getting the cheapest down and dirty poly that comes out of either an oil product or a natural gas product. But it's coming. It's moving in that direction. And then also end of life of plastic. The end of life of plastic has always been one of those issues. What do you do with a plastic bag when you're done with it? So ice is one of those things that's should be easy, right? Ice is filled. It's water. It's frozen water. Ice is food. We know that. IPIA. I learned my lesson. It's good. Ice is food, but it's one of those foods that it doesn't have. It isn't going to stain the plastic. It isn't going to leave a microbe behind. It isn't going to contaminate it. It's not like a smelly dog food that you're going to have to try and clean the plastic off, or plastic that's been laid out to cover a field that has fertilizer on it. When you get done with a plastic bag that held ice, it's a plastic bag. It's low density polyethylene, number 4. You can take that and put it into a recycle stream, reprocess it, turn it back into pellets, make another plastic bag out of it. It's endlessly recyclable when you treat it right and it's clean. But the problem has been we don't have good end of life for everything. We don't have a good end of life for the plastic, so most of it ends up in a landfill. So part of the technology I think that I'm excited about now moving forward is we're finding other ways to dispose of plastic. Recycling is great if you have enough recyclers out there to process that plastic. There's a problem in North America right now. We don't have enough recyclers. Right. The average, I think the last statistic I heard was that of the low density polyethylene number 4 poly bags, the little triangle has the number 4 in it. That stands for low density polyethylene. That are 100% recyclable, 8% of them get recycled in the United States, which means 92% don't have a good end of life. They go somewhere where they shouldn't. They escape into the environment, they get thrown into the ocean, or they get washed out on the beach, or majority of them just end up in a landfill. So when you put a plastic bag in a landfill, it's going to sit there and it's not going to degrade. It's not going to decompose. It's just going to stay there in a landfill and get buried and capped. So we're running out of landfill space. I don't think anybody thinks it's a great idea. It's not a circular economy to take something, use it once, put it in the ground, bury it, and then put a concrete cap on top of it. That's not a good end of life. So the technologies that are giving us the new end of life scenarios are probably the things that excite me the most right now.
Speaking of end of life, fortunately,
I'm 61, Ethan. Where are you going with this?
We're coming to the end of life of this podcast, and I hate it because we've really enjoyed. So we got a couple more questions. We'll finish with Jeff on a question here in a moment. But I did want to bring up, I saw a comment when I was going through some videos, and I came across this comment. I was curious if you've ever been approached to somebody like this, but it says 1 million bags, plastic bags a day from one factory in one location in one tiny part of the world. The earth, really has no hope of healing from our addiction to plastic. So has anyone ever told you you're killing the planet, Bob?
Yeah, you do hear that. And like I said, I think we've lost the PR war, but I think in some respects they're right in one way. When you don't take good stewardship of what you have and you abuse it, then people are right to point it out. But I don't think that plastic bags are the scourge of the world. I think they serve a purpose that can't easily be replaced, especially in packaging. For instance, those paper bags that are coming back into the stores, I defy any one of the ice people to take paper bags and put your ice in it. It's just not going to happen. So you have to have the plastic because it's the right package for the right product. The real question is, what do you do with it? How do you deal with it responsibly? I listened to a random podcast at PKN News. They are a Australian packaging consortium that does a podcast. So just look it up and listen. I started listening only because I like the Australian accent so much. And I'm in packaging, so it interested me. But Australia is making huge strides in fully 360 recyclable from beginning of life to end of life, 360 back into the environment, starting with a good product, ending with a good product. And so I think if we're careful, we can move that needle. We can do the right thing and not harm the environment in the process.
Well, I've got a couple things, and then we'll wrap up here in just a moment. But I think that's why people like to listen to our podcast, because they like my Southern accent. So
it is.
That's right.
Well, I was going to say, Bob, I've enjoyed going to the Australian Ice Convention the last 2 years, the
nice.
PIAA, and both of those years they've talked about recycling bags. And there's a company called Quanos that is heavily involved in that and finding solutions. And I think, in the American market, we kind of lag behind on the regulations. And in some ways, I think that's going to benefit our companies, because when the US catches up to setting regulations, we'll have an idea of, how have they solved the problems? How have they failed to solve the problems? And what can we learn from folks in Australia or Europe that can help us move along better and smoother and faster and hopefully cost effectively?
And you were talking about the marketing or the people I guess the promotion of plastic or paper. I worked. My father, his career was in the forestry industry, and during the summertime jobs they would have for different people, us college age kids, they would allow us to come in and work because there was a lot of people wanting to take off during the summer. So we would go in, and I worked in a paper plant and a paper mill. And if you've ever went by a paper mill and just that odor that you get, but by working in there, I learned about the white liquor that goes in to, basically take and create the pulp, and then the black liquor, the residue that goes out. And just, I don't want to call it a dirty industry, but I'm not going to call it a clean industry either. So there's a lot of things that go in that, I had firsthand knowledge, and we just don't have enough time to go into it. But it was a lot of things I learned about that, again, I think, like you said, it's kind of the marketing side of things. But it's great to hear where plastic is going, the sustainability, the research, the efforts that are going in, because we do want to take care of our planet. And that is something that every generation, no matter what you said earlier, that even if it's 10 lifetimes of natural gas, we still need to look at it now and try to take care of that in the future.
Yep.
All right, Bob, the last question we're going to ask, since this is a podcast for the ice industry, is if you were going to give advice to the ice companies out there that are listening today, what is some advice that you would give to them?
Wow. I would say probably number one, and it's a little self-serving. It'll sound like as a salesperson, but don't always go with the cheapest product you can find. Realize that there's value in better products. And it isn't always a matter of counting the pennies of what it cost you up front. Work with a company that you can trust. Work with somebody that's not going to lie to you. I think that's a big one. I want you to know I fell in love with the ice industry the minute I walked into that first ice shop, and every Iceman I've met since. They are salt of the earth people that just they're the people that you love to do business with. They're straight shooters. It's just a good, amazing group of people. So I would just say keep that up. Keep the relationships tight. The organizations that are behind it, the associations. I know a lot of them are merging now, and some of them, sadly, the Western Ice Association did close, and that was a big. That was a pain point, that it was a whole bunch of good independent ice people that used to get together and see what was going on in each other's companies and build each other up and encourage one another. So I would say, if you're an independent ice guy, stay independent. Sorry to anybody that might offend if you're part of one of the bigger conglomerations, but value what you have. I think you guys are amazing people, and proud to have been part of that industry.
Yeah. Outstanding. So we appreciate you joining us. We're coming from the Routman Studios from KCS headquarters here in Pelham, Alabama. Bob, we are so appreciative of you joining us. We're thankful for your dedication to this. I mean, it comes through clearly, what you're talking about and your passion that you have, even if it did take you 12 years to get through JUCO. So but we appreciate you.
Never let me forget it, will you?
No, I won't. But I appreciate your friendship over the years, and you welcomed, and I think we both welcomed each other in to the Western Ice Association. We just struck up an accord very, very quickly, and we just appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.